More now on that news that broke just a few minutes ago. Kenneth Feinberg, the White House's special paymaster, setting a $500,000 salary limit for employees at 4 companies that received exceptional U.S. bailout funds, basically those that are still on TARP. John Coffey, he's a professor of securities law at Columbia Law School, joins us now with his reaction. Mr. Coffey, what do you make of this? It looks like it's only for the salary and not for anything like bonuses.
Well, this is reaching a far larger proportion of the managers. Prior to now, it's only been the very highest paid managers. Now we're going down to the top 75 or so. It had been intimated for the last several days that he was thinking of doing this, and frankly, I think it will be a politically popular move. Mr. Feinberg doesn't have to be a weatherman to know which way the political winds are blowing, and frankly, the U.S. is taking a far milder course than France and Britain, where both of those countries are imposing very punitive taxes on any salary paid above similar levels. So this is a worldwide phenomenon, at least in Europe and the United States, and I suspect that it will get some criticism, but I think that Congress understands that the taxpayer is very upset with the amount of salaries being paid to financial industry executives.
Well, the difference between here and Europe, of course, is that in Europe they're taxing every bank, not just the ones that are still on government life support.
Yes. As I said, it was far milder, but it's in the same direction. There is a uniform trend.
Okay. Do we expect anything more stringent?
I don't know that he wants to get nearly as stringent as Europe is getting, but I think he is focused just on those companies that are receiving bailout money. That's where the taxpayer anger is the clearest. Bailouts are unpopular. We saw the president back away from them. And where you have bailout money, there are going to be strong compensation controls.
We're also, of course, monitoring the House Oversight Committee hearing regarding Bank of America and Merrill Lynch and why it kept the SEC in the dark regarding bonus payments. This is the 5th hearing we've had on this issue. What remains unanswered at this point? What could be answered at this point?
Well, the SEC made some informal inquiries by back channels to the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and they more or less got a stonewall. This is a long-standing tension. You have to understand that the bank regulators and the SEC disagree about transparency. Bank regulators are primarily focused on protecting bank solvency, and they fear a run on the bank. The SEC is primarily focused on transparency and aiding shareholders, and they want maximum disclosure. Those two agendas conflict, and this is the classic kind of case where the Federal Reserve did not want shareholders knowing that the losses at Merrill Lynch were staggering because the Merrill Lynch Bank of America merger was a keystone in their financial plan to prevent a total meltdown. And I think they were right. I think there would have been a meltdown had that merger not occurred.
Right. Robert Khuzami, the enforcement director over at the SEC, among those testifying, along with Sheila Bair, the director of the FDIC. To what extent do you think what happened was a result of the fact that regulators, officials seem to be making things up as the crisis went along?
Well, that's inevitable. This kind of crisis doesn't have a game plan that tells you what to do when the entire economy seems to be melting down. But I think this is the long-standing difference in perspectives. The bank regulators were scared the disclosure would panic the market, and the SEC wanted to make full disclosure but didn't really have access to the information. And they were basically told by Treasury and the Federal Reserve that this was a priority for the government and that it was not appreciated that they sought additional information.
Now, Khuzami has also said that the SEC may consider more claims against Bank of America. Is that a good idea?
Well, of course, we have litigation going on in New York where the judge there has told the SEC that they should be focusing on the officers and not the bank as a whole. If all you do is sue the bank, you're ultimately suing the shareholders that you're supposed to be protecting, and it's somewhat counterproductive. I think that the real question for the SEC is, will they take the step of looking at the conduct of any of the bank officers? You know, corporations are legal fictions. Some officer within that bank made a decision not to disclose the bonus payments that are the source of much of this controversy.
Bottom line, what is the legacy of this going forward?
Well, I think that the SEC is beginning to change its stance. I think they are becoming a tougher, more pro-enforcement body than they were in the past. In the past, they often had very easy settlements and entered into what were called go and sin no more decrees that had no large penalties and no individual liability. I think that is slowly changing, and I think the country needs that to change, because I think you're only going to get strong deterrence if you focus on individual officers and sometimes the lawyers and other officials who advise them.
All right, thank you so much. We've been speaking with John Coffey, professor of securities law at Columbia Law School.